Welcome back to Visioncast. I'm Shrawan Sumani, your host. We have a distinguished gentleman with us today, someone who's learned how to use networking organizations and expand into multiple verticals. Somebody who's a franchisee owner for Corporate Connections, Andhra and Telangana, who's a co-founder of Gapuff LLP, a different glass unit. Let's welcome Ajay Manchukonda in our show today. Ajay, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Shravan.
So Ajay, this is more about how your journey has been. You have been somebody who's got into many multiple verticals. As we move on, we'll have questions pertaining to that.
Sure.
But first and foremost, having known you a bit earlier than the journey that you joined BNI and that started steamrolling things in the right direction concerning to business. I've always known you as somebody who had a very good, strong background, happy-go-lucky, having studied abroad, came back, was having a good life. So what made you join BNI? When BNI came to Vizag, what sort of attracted you to BNI?
It's interesting thing you spoke about a strong background. Early days, I realized needn't necessarily make you a good entrepreneur, and that's what I felt was lacking. Where we needed to actually get business. I was a part of the legacy business, but I was a part of a business that was dying. So the fact that I had to get back onto it, learn the roots from scratch, and build a market for myself, I was looking for opportunities to where I can go forward, and that's when BNI actually knocked the doors at the right time.
Okay. So what attracted you to BNI?
Initially, a simple source of getting more business. Initially.
Okay. So when you say simple source to get more business, you mean that so many entrepreneurs in the room trying to help each other get more business?
Absolutely. When you meet 30, 40 people, right, who are talking the same language of business, you're bound to get business one way or the other. If nothing else, you get good ideas.
Okay. So initially, what role did BNI play in helping you grow your business?
So the good part was when I joined BNI, I actually was only a part of a business for about 6 to 7 months. So I had a lot of free time. So I realized if I could just take up a simple role in BNI, right, I would know a lot more about how business works. I would be interacting with a lot more entrepreneurs, maybe learn something from them. And that's what helped me a lot. Because the fact that I was able to give that time towards BNI eventually made me get a lot from it.
So you just said that you had free time then. People still feel you have a lot of free time now.
Free time is very subjective. I don't believe anybody when they say they're busy. I believe this is not their priority.
Okay, okay. So okay, then you joined BNI. You had the faith that BNI could be a platform that could help you gain more business, since you're a lot of entrepreneurs together in the same room. How did you start expanding from one vertical to the other? From one business to the other. What sparked that?
So I think very early I realized that I wanted to be a serial entrepreneur. For whatever the reason, whatever I don't know where I heard the word or why I wanted to become that. I always wanted to be a successful serial entrepreneur. And being in BNI for almost 3 to 4 years, I realized BNI is a very strong base for me to grow into different verticals as well because I was already active and aggressive in BNI. I was already known to a few hundred entrepreneurs already by then. Now, keeping that in mind, I realized even if I start a few more businesses, I will have the support of BNI for me to grow further.
Okay. So how do you identify different opportunities across different verticals, different industries for you to try to get into them?
I think the first thing, is to have a positive approach. I know it sounds very simple, but usually what happens is there's a pessimistic approach and an optimistic approach. A pessimist always says any new opportunity comes, this will fail. I'm exactly the opposite. I say it might just work. And then you go deeper. And since I'm a hardcore numbers guy, I like to actually write down stuff, understand how the market is, understand the numbers, the mathematics of it, to see if it actually makes sense, even though I have no idea about the industry.
So there's no emotional quotient at all attached to it that he's my very close friend. He's proposing something. I have to do it with him. Absolutely no emotional quotient attached to
As
it.
much that would give the upper hand because I do not want to do business with a stranger. For me, business comes naturally when I like to work with people that I know very well because the basic trust factor is already established. I don't need to work hard towards that. I just need to work towards the actual business.
Okay. So what systems have helped you manage multiple businesses? Being part of multiple businesses, what systems have actually, or self checks have actually helped you?
I think it's not just about one system or one process in place. I do over the last 5 years, I've developed multiple systems in place. But one of the biggest things I told myself, and honestly, I think which also helped me grow as a base, is the fact that I should not be working on operations. I should be managing people. The minute
Okay.
I'm doing that, I have a chance to grow much bigger.
Okay. So you feel your strength is actually managing people.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when you say about managing people, the multiple businesses that you are in today, obviously you're working with a lot number of partners, right?
Correct.
So you sort of try to have a good wavelength with them in terms of business. That helps you actually establish one business, leave it to him, then move on to the other business, or try to establish something else. Is that how it goes?
Not exactly. So see, I have a very straightforward strategy, right? Although I don't know the industry, the partner who's coming on board with me has to be, I would not say a professional in that, but at least well sorted or well versed in that industry, and he knows what he's doing and he's eager to grow. I take only those people as partners, or I only welcome them as to be my partners. Maybe taking is the wrong word. So keeping that in mind, I know what happens is because of my networking experience over the last 15 years. I already have a strong network. I have a few strategies in place. I have a few backups in place. Keeping all that in mind, and obviously a ton of experience as well. Now, keeping this in mind, I partner with people who want to grow. I use my expertise not in the field, but in everything else, in including systems, in terms of finances, in terms of accounts, in terms of strategy, in terms of looking at the bigger picture, and that's what I look at. So this is usually my role in all the businesses that I start over the last few years.
Okay, so Ajay, let's take a case study.
Sure.
Gap Tough was one of the first big things that we actually got into.
No, it is the biggest thing.
Okay, it is the biggest thing that I've gotten into, right? So, how did the thought of Gap Tough formulate? Because till then you had a rich, background of trading in glass, and from there to getting into manufacturing. How did that happen?
So to be honest, that's a no-brainer because especially if I'm into glass, if I look at forward integration, the next step was a toughening unit. I'm talking about 10 years back. And when I joined the business, as I mentioned, right, I entered late into the business. So I had to compete with a few hundred traders. Now, how am I going to be different? The only way to do that is to go one step beyond to give people what they don't have yet. And that was the reason I got the idea of a toughened glass factory even 4 years before I started the factory. But my granddad clearly said, if you don't even know the trade, how are you going to manufacture something? And that was the reason why I got into the trading business, understood the whole dynamics of how the glass industry works. And I knew at one point of time, the eventual thing was to start a toughened glass factory.
I'm not sure whether you know that or not. Maybe this is before you came back to Vizag. But your granddad, Sudarshan Swamiji, he was the pioneer of the plywood and the glass entire industry in Vizag, or the entire trade that was set up in Vizag. He was the
I'll
pioneer
stop you
for
there.
that.
I really don't know it. I only heard stories about it. Please.
Okay. So, so many business verticals you've got into, business ideas that maybe you got partners for it, business ideas that sort of maybe came on to you because of your growing influence and growing network that you had. Which was the first one, if it had, which is the first one that backfired, that failed? So when I say fail, I don't mean that you put in money and you lost it completely, but it could be in two different ways. One could be maybe the growth you expected was not there. The growth or the return
Right.
that you expected was not happening. And two, it was something that maybe was taking a lot more of your mental effort and the energy, or maybe it was draining out you a little bit compared to what it was giving back to you.
Right.
So anything like that happened
Yeah,
so
yeah, of
far?
course, a lot. Well, the first one had to be my pharma company. We actually started that about 10 years ago with with a common friend. He was the major partner, I was the minor stakeholder. So out of excitement, I got into it. Obviously, he was a little more aware of the pharma industry and things, but I had no clue. But what happened was a lot of factors, external factors, played over the last a few years after we started the factory, because of which we could not be very successful. It's still profitable, but not up to our expectations. Things like GST, things like COVID, a lot of factors like that, unfortunately, didn't help us grow the way we wanted to grow, and that was a learning experience for me
Okay,
as well.
just to ask you one question between. COVID was a time when the pharma industry actually blew out of the roof. So were you still in pharma at the point of time when COVID hit?
I did. I was in pharma, but unfortunately, that's not how pharma works. So
Okay.
during COVID, all that was at its peak, right? It was only for the essential products related to COVID.
Okay.
If you observe, during COVID, everybody increased their hygiene. So all the basic medication actually decreased their demand. So we were into a product called Allegra, the backend process for Allegra. So
Right.
when people didn't
Right.
have enough of the common colds and stuff, they didn't need Allegra.
Okay. Okay.
And that was a big backfire, not because of anything that we did. It was just external circumstances that weren't really in our control.
So okay. So how many years was that entire process of you getting into that pharma thing and you exiting it?
About 5 to 6 years.
Okay, for 5 to 6 years,
Yeah.
and you were never involved in day-to-day activities of it.
Never. Except my core business, which is into glass and a few other things now, I was never into operations of any other business.
So, did you lose money in that pharma thing?
In the whole process, I've not lost money, but I didn't get much as well. Definitely, I didn't lose money in the process though.
Okay, so the specialized product line that you're into in pharma, you never thought of actually changing it post COVID to maybe what the times are demanding and carry on with that?
Again, that's not how pharma works. You build the factory based on what product you want to do.
Okay,
So it's very tricky. If you want to change your product, you got to change your entire process, including the equipment.
okay. So now, given a chance, would you want to get into that again, something like that again?
Given a chance, I would not want to get into manufacturing.
Okay, why so? You're already into Gap Tough, that's manufacturing, right?
Yeah, but the ups and downs, the headaches, the external factors, the governments, the economy, everything plays a very, very impactful role. Labor, all these things, as much as it's nice to say I own a toughened glass factory, the headaches that go with it, I don't think are really substantial. Towards the profit and the what effort you put in.
So you just use the word headaches. I actually spoke to your wife Shweta also a couple of times, before setting up this podcast time. So I asked her the same thing, that you see your husband with so many partners, so many verticals. So what do you think he actually thinks about it? Because he's got so many different partners.
She,
I asked her about
so
you.
what she thinks you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. So she told me two things which I found quite interesting, to be honest. One was lesser profit, maybe, but lesser time involvement, lesser headaches, more people to manage. That is what she said. So, do you actually, endorse what she feels, that yes, this is the case?
Initially, as far as the toughened glass factory goes, to an extent, but today the models I'm getting into is completely different. I work only on higher margins. I only work on I get into businesses that are not really credit based and definitely have faster ROI.
Okay. So, do you pick and choose your partners, or do you pick and choose the proposition and then look at the partners?
I think it's a combination of both. Like, for example, they can't quote exactly a specific business, but there are some opportunities where I got the opportunity first and then I had to pick the right partner to run it. There was another business where a friend of mine came up with the opportunity because he was already good at it and they wanted to grow and he wanted me to be a part of it. So I jumped into both.
Okay. So, before we move ahead, briefly, what are the different kind of verticals you're into as on today
So I'm into
that
glass.
you'd like to speak about?
Yeah, I'm into glass retail. I also have a toughened glass factory. So I run a successful high-end networking organization called Corporate Connections. I have 3 franchisees of that. I'm also into insurance. We have an insurance brokerage firm. We also recently invested into a company that actually gets base oil from used engine oil. I'm also into a startup fund and a few other investments like land and other things as well.
So, of all these different verticals, when you go back and think about them, which is the one vertical that brings a smile on your face, and gives you the feeling that job well done?
Corporate Connections, hands down.
Why? Because apart from corporate connections being run like a business by you, it's also given you a lot of more exposure to different kind of verticals being available for investing
Today,
in.
that's what it is. But when I started 5 years back, it was a joke to most of them because it was a global organization that needed to bring in like minded successful entrepreneurs together who had at least 50 crore turnover, annual turnover, and pay 5 lakhs as fees annually. And when I spoke about this to a bunch of friends, they laughed on my face, saying, Ajay, whom are you going to find people like, where are you going to find people like that in a city like Vizag? So that was to be a biggest challenge at that point of time. But it was a little too late because I actually jumped into it out of excitement. And the fact that I already signed up and I jumped, I had to prove a point to the world.
Okay, okay. Ajay, what advice would you like to give to entrepreneurs who want to use BNI or CC as a launching pad for where they want to see their business grow to?
They're very different, Shravan, BNI and CC. But if the topic is about BNI, let me say this is your stepping stone for bigger dreams. If you really want to make a name for yourself and grow into the bigger businesses, then this is your base.
So how do you feel CC is different? Because there are different levels of volumes of business, or there are different levels of businesses altogether that you feel they're different?
So BNI is for any kind of entrepreneur, from somebody who's just started the business or somebody who's already successful. But CC is for only for entrepreneurs who already have a annual turnover of 50 crore and above.
Right, right. So when you got into BNI and when CC came into the picture, when you had the opportunity to get into CC, and as you said, that you jumped into it because you're excited about it, and people or friends around you were not really sure about it. Was there self doubt in the process of the first year or so when the struggle must have been higher to launch a chapter in CC?
Absolutely. Initially I thought it's going to be easy to get people on board. When I started meeting people, I realized as much as people are successful or they probably have 80 or 100 crore turnover, they weren't in a position to spend that kind of money for a networking organization. That culture was not there yet in Andhra, to be honest.
Okay, since you have earlier said that CC is one of the verticals that brings a smile to your face, that maybe you're enjoying the most. So, in short, for viewers, what and how does CC or corporate connections actually help you?
It helps me in many ways, but the fact that excites me or brings a smile, right, is I was able to bring diverse crowds with different mindsets come together and have amazing conversations together.
So that is how it helped you. What about the people who join, the members of corporate connections? How do you feel it would help them?
Even for them, see, any successful entrepreneur, right, let's say 50 crores or 500 crores, even they want a good life. They want to have good set of friends, a group that they can call their tribe. And that's the kind of group you find in corporate connections.
In other words, are you trying to say when you start reaching the top, you start getting lonely? Is the
Absolutely.
something
There's a
on those
very
lines?
common saying in CC saying, which says lonely at the top. A very successful entrepreneur who runs a medium to a large organization who's at the top is usually lonely.
Okay. I have asked you this question before also. So many partners, less profit, less headache, more commitment towards your partners. Do you feel committed having running a successful or work or a business with one of the partners with whom maybe you spent 4 5 years being a partner and the work is still going good? Do you feel committed offering him any new opportunity that comes your way?
Absolutely. I do get my existing partners, a few of them on board for the new ones as well. As long as they have a little bit of time, they align with my future vision. I absolutely would love to bring them on board to different opportunities that I get.
I had spoken to a couple of your very close friends. I
Okay.
would not want to name them.
Okay.
So I'd asked a couple of them one question each that they would like to ask you.
Okay.
I got a
Interesting.
couple of interesting questions. One of them told me that the question I would like to ask if I am doing this is, as an investor, when and how do you actually end up selecting when to enter a new vertical? And okay, so I think let's get the answer to the first part of the question. When and how do you select the right time to enter a new vertical?
So it's a little different back then to today because about 5 years back, I had little. I think I had a smaller risk appetite, which means I had to get into a business that was at a much higher chance of getting successful. Which means it had to be a business that was already up and running. It was already uh, flourished in the market, but there was still scope for more. And I could find that idea, so it's easy for me to get somebody else on board as well because it is going to get successful, if not today, tomorrow.
Okay, so what you're trying to say is, as time has moved on, your risk appetite has increased.
Absolutely. Today, I'm looking at two startups that are starting from scratch and completely new concepts that may or may not work, but there's a scope that if it works, it can grow very big.
So I have an interesting question. Since you've had multiple partners, you've spoken of this again and again. The main reason being you've been successful so far in different verticals with a lot of different people. How do you align your risk appetite with those of your partners? They might not be the same always.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, risk appetite is very different. As long as the vision aligns, then the share of percentage. the investment patterns, all that come into picture based on the vision. And then next is the risk appetite.
So you think you have reached a stage where maybe you're part of 10 different verticals, including maybe four new startups. If one fails, the other nine would deliver. If two fail, the other eight would
Absolutely.
deliver.
Absolutely.
So you're not. So in a way, being in so many verticals actually helps you reduce your risk overall, even if one goes south.
101%. And I want to call that out loudly because this is my biggest learning in COVID. What happened was at COVID, I was only into two businesses proper, the glass retail and the toughened glass factory. We were shut for 45 days in the first wave and about 45 days in the second wave as well because, it was complete lockdown and we lost a ton of money. To be honest, we lost close to 1 crore. And that's when I realized unless we have multiple businesses or different verticals, right, diversifying, there's nothing that can even out because there's always going to be external factors that are not going to be in your control. That was my biggest takeaway from COVID that made me go bigger and say I need to expand into completely different verticals.
Okay, you just made a point that you guys lost a lot of money in your glass factory and the
Correct.
retail trade during COVID.
Correct.
Were you present during Hudud? Was your glass factory there during Hudud?
No, Hood, my factory was not there. I was into retail. I did make
A
a
ton of
decent
money?
amount. I wouldn't say ton because I was still a trader. So I did make a decent amount of money at that point of time.
Okay, okay, okay. So, what's been your experience in the last 10 years as an investor on a scale of 1 to 10? Extremely happy, or you still feel there is the scope to grow further, get into a few more verticals? What do you feel?
No, I'm quite happy, but there's always scope to grow. I know somebody who has 95 registered businesses, and I'm not even one twelfth of where they are.
So, that brings me to my next question, and again from one of your very close friends. So, his question is, when is it time to hang up the boots and say, I've expanded enough? Let's sit back, enjoy this, and consolidate the existing businesses.
That's a very tricky question because over the last 1 year, I've been asking myself the same question multiple times. Unfortunately, different months had different answers. That basically I realized at certain places, right, I'm just 40 years old. So why should I say it's enough? As long as I'm making money, I'm able to make a considerable difference to the society, to my friends, to my family. I have the age, I have the energy. Why not grow more?
So, to Shrikant's close friends who had these questions for him, I really hope that answers your questions. In a nutshell, I can tell you his appetite has not gone down. He's still looking for new ventures, he's still looking for new businesses. So, if you guys have any ideas, you can definitely pitch it back to him. So, Ajay, one final question about the partners.
Sure.
In totally, you have about what, 30 different partners?
Close to, yeah.
Close to? Different partners, different kind of individuals, different tastes. How do you socialize with them? Because at the end of the day, maintaining a healthy business relationship over so many years, you definitely have to meet socially, spend some time together, maybe families. So how do you do it? So many different people.
I do socialize with them every now and then. So some more than the others for sure. But there's certain amount of effort spent towards maintaining the relationship as well with each and every one of them. But there's one more fact I want to talk about, Sean, which probably you've not asked the question yet, is how do I manage my partners? Because a lot of them have asked me the same question, right? If I can answer that
Yes,
question
please,
as
please,
well.
please go ahead.
The thing I honestly believe is everybody wants to be heard. And that's where I think I play a very important role. I listen to what they have to say, understand the root cause of the problem, not their issue at that point of time, and try to bridge the gap between, say, two other people who are not in sync, or just be their sounding board for their frustration at that point of time. I think that's what helped me a lot in managing or handling these different partners with different backgrounds, different mindsets, different uh, financial situation, the backgrounds as well.
So speaking about financial situations, if there came a point where you and one of your partners maybe had to pitch in a certain X amount of money for a new work or new startup,
Right.
there are always timelines with a new startup or a new work, any new business today. And something went south, he was not able to do it. Maybe, hypothetically, if for him that work was very important, for you it was one of your works.
Correct.
But if you realize that that work is so important for him, he needs or he wants it, but at this point of time he's having some problems, would you go out of your way to actually help him and get him into it, with obviously whatever discussions or whatever agreements you need to have? Would you do that?
100%. See, if he succeeds and he's doing his work right or eventually gets the thing done, it's profitable for me, right? And as an organization, we're profitable. And that's something I always believed in as well. You look at somebody else be extremely successful, and there's two ways to look at it. Either you're like, oh my God, how can I be him? Or it's like, I wish I was him. It's just the way you look at it. There's two ways. Either you get jealous of him or you get inspired by him, find the right way to get to where he is.
Great. Okay. So there are few fun questions that were put together, that the team has put together. So don't take it too seriously, but
That's
we'd
fine.
like to know what you feel.
Sure.
What's one business venture you did try if you had money and time was not an issue?
A high-end nightclub.
Okay. Have you ever thought about that, or has
Yeah,
any
yeah.
proposition ever come
About 12
across?
years back, I almost started a nightclub, but luckily, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But I'm glad it didn't because they're not really profitable ventures.
In today's time, they're still not profitable.
Thanks to the liquor licenses and the overheads, that's too big a amount to look at.
So I think for night clubs or pubs, the entire cost of the interiors, how the place looks like, has to be revamped periodically. That's also a
Correct.
huge expense.
It is every 4 years. If you don't, then you're just lagging behind, and people are going to leave your place and go to the next good thing.
So how often do you visit a nightclub? Every day, once a
Post
week?
40, very less. But no, that's actually just a joke. But I'm saying I prefer private parties, but I do visit at least once a week.
Okay. And what's the scene if you compare? There are a lot of new places that are opening up in
Correct.
Vizag. If you compare that with Hyderabad, given the demographics of both the cities are completely different, what do you think? How is Vizag compared to Hyderabad?
No, we are nowhere near. But I don't blame them because that's what the appetite of Vizag is today. But 5 years down the line, when we're going to have the international companies on board and we're going to have more spending power, I'm sure much more bigger things are going to come up. Because today, the biggest nightclub which is there is probably uh, one fifth of an average nightclub of Hyderabad.
Okay. You're speaking about the size, the entire
The
grandeur,
size,
everything.
exactly the grandeur, the quality, the options, the whole wow factor.
Okay. So you have partners in Hyderabad.
Right.
You never got a proposal of putting up something like this in Hyderabad?
Yes, absolutely. I did get proposals for restaurants. I did get proposal for cafes. I did get proposal for nightclubs. But in a place like Hyderabad, if you want to invest in a nightclub, it has to be at least 10 crores combined amount. But that didn't seem feasible to me at that point of time. Maybe in the future, I might look at it. But today, I'm not too keen on that angle right now.
Okay. So what's a hobby or habit that people would be surprised to know that you have?
I'm sure most of them know how much I love travel. But the thing I love about travel is when I travel with my family, because I have the proper relaxed time with them. We like to roam around, we like to explore things, we have our time together.
When was your last holiday?
So, as a family, we do a lot of small trips. But the last big trip I did was Japan. That was just about 6 months ago, about 15 days trip, and it was really memorable.
And when is the next trip?
In the next few days, we're off to Cambodia.
So for all of you having multiple businesses, multiple verticals, a lot of partners, as long as all of those things are doing well, you can go on multiple holidays. Give it a try. So if your business life would be a movie, what would that be?
That's a very tough question because I never related myself to my life to a movie. But something that always pops is the movie Narsimha by Rajinikanth. I don't know if you've seen that or not. Not to the truest sense, but even he's like a guy, very lower class employee kind of a thing. But then he finds his way to become a very rich entrepreneur, but still down to earth, still loves his family, and still respects the community and the society.
Okay.
I'm
Now,
not, by the way, I'm not there yet. One
uh-huh.
fine day, I hope to get there.
Okay. So if you came across a good proposal, you brought it home, discussed it with your wife over dinner on the table, and she says, "I don't like it. I don't like that guy. A lot of attitude and all that. Why do you have to get into business with anybody and everybody?" What would you say? And you really want to get into it because you like that proposal, you
That's
like that
her.
line of work.
That's her answer for every single proposal of mine.
Shweta, I hope you're listening.
But she's the one who kind of grounds me and puts me in my place to understand all aspects before jumping into it. But it's my responsibility to ensure I explain to her why I like this business, what's the scope, and even though everybody's good and bad, what is that person's positive that I can take from and ensure the business is successful.
So, any of your verticals that Shweta actually helps look into?
Today, she doesn't help me look into any specific vertical. She helps me overall into small, small tasks and different things from all businesses put together. And as I said, primarily, she helps me be in place to understand what's right instead of she puts my excitement in place to ensure that the businesses are profitable.
Good, good. What's the strangest or most unexpected way a business opportunity has come your way?
Just about 2 months back, I met an entrepreneur who owns a cafe. And I was talking to him because we had to do a small session for corporate connections members in his cafe. And we were just talking to him casually to see how it's going to happen. And then I was kind of pitching to him to join corporate connections because I thought he's a good fit. And coincidentally, in a day or two, it so happened that I ended up taking up his franchisee.
Oh, okay, that's amazing. So, what's your guilty pleasure after a long work there? You prefer having a drink, going for a walk, seeing a movie? What did you prefer doing?
My guilty pleasure is always chocolates. Alcohol is there, but that's just there every now and then. But for me, my favorite thing is in terms of a chicken 65 or tandoori chicken, and post that and a bunch of chocolates, and with my wife and daughter being there because
Mhm.
I just it's good to just spend time with them, pulling their leg or watching TV. It's as simple as that.
I absolutely, absolutely. So, have you ever closed a deal in a very unusual place, in a coffee shop, in the gym, or in the spa, or
Coffee shop is very common. I have a lot of my business deals in coffee shops, but I remember that the pharma company I started or I joined as a
Mhm.
partner happened over lots of drinks through multiple parties.
Okay. So, if you had to pick one partner from your entire range of partners, whom you'd like to spend time on a deserted island, who would that be?
Okay, that's a very tough question. Uh, I know I do have some interesting partners with varied backgrounds, but there's somebody I really look up to is Anant, who's my partner in Corporate Connections, Hyderabad. He's a mystery, and every single time I meet him once a month, by the way, and every time I learn something new from him.
Okay. So, he's actively into corporate connections,
Very
Hyderabad.
much. And the
Okay.
Corporate Connection might be one of his smallest businesses. He has tons of other businesses. A very inspiring person to just to have a conversation with.
Okay. What's one piece of advice you got early that you now totally disagree with? See, in childhood, we're taught a lot of different things. And when you grow up, you realize that that was a bunch of crap, maybe just to make us listen to them. So,
I think certain things, how it changes generations is also the fact that, I come from a family of traditions of businesses, and they've all stuck to traditional business of sitting in their retail stores and doing big businesses. And that's something I've been taught as well, that you have to work hard, stay in one place, stick to a business to grow big. That's something I never believed in. And I think over the last 15 years journey, I'm glad that I've proved them wrong.
so you know, we were born in a generation when in our childhood, uh, we didn't have a lot of television time, and things were much more simpler. We were always, it was very easy to get whacked, because you didn't do something right then. And now, when we have children, where you're even scared to whack them, not sure how they're going to react. What do you feel? How different have things gotten from our childhood to our kids' childhood now?
Surprisingly, my childhood was not like that. I was a pampered, spoiled brat. I used to watch a ton of TV. I had loads of pocket money, and I had people pampering me from all sides. Nobody ever stopped me from doing anything. I know it sounds very arrogant, but that's how who I used to be once upon a time. But yes, having said that, the kids today are extremely spoiled. Also, I realized recently in a conversation why kids are spoiled is because we let them be spoiled. And as you said, right, it's easy to whack somebody or easy to just be strict back then. Today, the whole things have changed where the parents are hands on, lot more exposure to everything, knowledge about everything in the world is at their fingertips. and the closeness with your next generation is there much faster than previous generations.
So your couple of answers to the last two questions has brought two questions to my mind. One, when we sit on the dining table to have food together as a family, do you follow the rule that the phones have to be upside down and nobody can talk? Or sometimes does it end up with everybody also scrolling on the phone and mindlessly eating? How is it?
I have a completely different take on this because unfortunately we don't sit for dinner as a family. All three of us have meals at different times. We do spend good time with each other, but not at the dining table, unfortunately. But having said that, that's something I really want to start soon, where three of us have a common dinner time and we eat together with our phones put aside.
Because I feel with the kids having different schedules today, one meal should be there that we should be doing together as a family.
Absolutely. I regret that I've not done that till now, but that's something I really want to start as soon as possible.
You made a comment a couple of questions back that you had loads of pocket money and you're a spoiled brat then. So through a lot of people that I've known, I've heard something that was just before your marriage. So I just want
Okay.
you to answer as a yes or no. I
Okay.
was told that Ajay Manchukonda flew down to London to break up with his girlfriend then and then came back to India. Is that true?
Not entirely true, but partly yes.
Partly true. Okay. Ajay, describe your ideal day off. No phone calls, no emails, absolutely spending time with the family. Is that it? Or is it more about spending time on your own self, reading a book, maybe going to the spa? Or how do you actually like
Spending
it?
time on myself and with family, I do every single day. But an ideal day off is usually when I have on my Sundays where my phone's somewhere in the house. I have no idea where it is. And me and my family watch movies. We probably go for lunch, probably a coffee. My daughter loves French fries, so probably eventually we end up going to Beanbo to have French fries.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay. So, Ajay, one important question. Given your experience of the last 10 years as an entrepreneur with multiple verticals, you've spoken about that again and again. But why I've spoken about that again and again is to drive home the point that this is a beautiful success story. We have gotten into so many different verticals and most are doing well. Whatever didn't do well and backfired didn't make you lose money as such, but you gained a lot through experience.
absolutely.
So does it make a difference with the kind of people you hang around with? Does that make a difference?
Always makes a difference. There's one saying I always believed in that actually led me to take up corporate connections as well, out of excitement, as I mentioned, is if you want to be a lion, you got to roam with the pride of lions. So if you roam with the right kind of people, with the right mindset, I don't mean the money, just the right mindset to grow or to give or whatever, you'll end up being similar to them.
So if you're ready to give and you're not judgmental about the other person, you think it will hold you in good stead, making better friends, making better partners, maybe, or creating more opportunities for yourself?
Always, always. See, the one big thing I realized what a lot of them make a mistake is, right, is having the wrong kind of networking. I'll tell you how I relate to it. When I used to network with people, I never did it for a reason. If I helped anybody, I didn't do it because I wanted something back in return. I just did it because I wanted to do. And I realized all those things back then helped me today make good friends, great partners, and wonderful business opportunities.
So every bit of time spent the right way is actually coming back to you in a positive way.
Absolutely. Good karma, right? What goes around comes
Comes
around. Whether
around.
you believe it or not, that absolutely works. Your intention, your execution always matters. Why are you doing it? Do you have an internal or a deeper objective of why you're doing it, or you're just doing it for your own personal satisfaction? And that's what makes a big difference between, uh, I would say, a satisfied, simple entrepreneur towards somebody who's extremely successful.
Okay, Ajay. So, Ajay, we have a few rapid fire questions just to wrap up this session. So, the rapid fire question, you have to choose just one option, right? You cannot give me answer that is around it, right?
Okay.
So, net work meeting or solo brainstorming session,
Always network meetings.
work from a cafe or a corner office,
Corner office, cafes are to chill.
scale fast or build slow,
Always scale fast.
emails or phone calls,
I prefer WhatsApp,
business books or podcasts,
podcasts. I'll sleep if I read books.
early morning hustle or a late night grind.
Till a few years back, absolutely late night grind. Today, I've become a completely morning person.
Branding or systems?
I can't pick one because over the years I realized it has to be a combination of both.
Okay. So as I told you, you have to pick one. This final question, you have to pick one. Whom would you want to spend more time with? With Shweta, your wife, or Leah, your daughter? No, it's okay, Ajay. I don't want an answer to that. We know you're a
Actually,
family man.
I would love to answer that in a way
Okay.
because today I think I want to spend more time with my daughter because she's growing. She's 10 years old and she's still finding her path. And I think more time with me will help her get to the right place.
Ajay, thank you so much. We look forward to hosting you again. Maybe once you reach 20 odd businesses, then we'll definitely try and ensure that we catch up again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.